Economy. We shed light on why debt servicing costs hamper economic growth for ordinary Kenyans. Governance and electoral malpractices. Why restoring Kenyans' public confidence is the biggest hurdle for the newly appointed IEBC officials. Kenya's economic backbone breaks. Climate shocks threaten agriculture and livestock. Increase in the reliance on commercial and non-commercial borrowing is bringing Kenya's life into a tipping point. Hello and welcome to InFocus News, coming to you live from TV7 Newsroom. I'm your host, Jobo Juma. Thanks to all our viewers in Kenya and around the world for joining us. We are here with you for the next 25 minutes. Stay with us for top stories from Africa and beyond. This is InFocus News. You can join the conversation on our social media handles at InFocus News on X, Instagram and TikTok. The hashtag remains InFocus News TV7. Economic fragility and debt distress. Kenya continues to navigate a high-stake of balancing act between maintaining sovereignty, solvency and managing intense domestic economic pressure. The Treasury raised a total of $2.2 billion through a dual tranche Eurobond to refinance maturing debt. However, this structural fragility remains acute to the public debt has definitely increased. Our reporter Juliet was on the ground and has more.
In the heart of Nairobi, the rhythm has changed. The famous roar of the city's busiest market, once the pulse of East Africa commerce, has faded into a hollow echo. To the untrained eye, the crowds are still here, the dust still rises, and the shouting continues. But look closer. You will see a motion without momentum. Thousands are passing through these stalls, but they are no longer shoppers. They are spectators of a life they can no longer afford.
Ukiwa na participation ya kuchukua yani kama tunataka iongezwe ama hatutaki inaongezangwa tu, vitu zinaongezwa tu, kila kitu, all taxes zinaongezwa tu, just like that. Hakuna, sijawahi iona public participation ikifanywa kuhusu hiyo.
The Kenyan economic rate has hit a friction point where the velocity of the street has outpaced the thickness of the wallet. Here, window shopping isn't just a hobby, it is a symptom of a deep financial fatigue. And as the cost of living rises, the shilling stretches thin. The market has become a place where people move with no aim to purchase, and where the hustle is slowly being silenced by the simple, brutal reality of empty pockets.
We are Curio Shop, which means that we sell traditional stuffs. We do it locally from our manufacturers locally. We sell vitenges, bags, like animals, like everything. So within the past 2 years, the economy has been so bad. Because to sustain like the way we used to, like our shop is 2 years. When we were starting, like we put the graph tungeweza sustain and do our sums, bring in new things like every week. Lakini like from last year things are not good. Because unapata hatuwezi kujiprogram azin tuseme like this week tutaendea vitu, hii wiki tutaendea vitu. Things have been very difficult. Secondly, like unapata our things now are from the local manufacturers, although we get some things from Tanzania maybe, or even Senegal, everything, because we are all about Africa. Unapata taxes juu sana. If you want to bring like the materials or something, unapata iko juu sana na ina like the taxes, so hata kupromote other people unapata hivyo kujipromote na become even harder and harder and harder. So what we would request, at least vitu kama hizo taxes and everything, because we are trying to grow. You see, like here we are using even tents. You can imagine the struggles we have when it's sunny, when it's rainy, you know. So at least when we grow, hata kama in the past few years now we may get into a building or a mall, this is where to start. But when the taxes are high and everything, it will be difficult for us. So we request the government to look at that. The taxes are so high. Please, wajaribu to minimize.
Our correspondent Juliet joined us live. Juliet, given that the debt obligation are consuming the lion's share of ordinary revenue, what specific policy shifts are required in 2026 to prevent this fiscal pressure from completely eroding the purchasing power of the average Kenyan?
We're witnessing a classic debt overhang, where the cost of servicing all loans is choking new growth. In 2026, Kenya is essentially in a liquidity trap because nearly 70% of domestic revenue is committed to creditors. The government is crowding out the private sector.
Juliet, what is the reason for economic pressure in Kenya right now?
This means banks prefer lending to the state rather than to Mama Mboga or the Kikomba trader. To break this cycle, we must move beyond the mere austerity and focus on aggressive debt restructuring and widening the tax base without increasing the tax rate, which is currently at a tipping point and diminishing return. Life on the street has become a game of survival. People are so broke that they barely look at what others are carrying. They are focused on their next meal.
Thank you for your insights, Juliet. Joining me in studio to evaluate the economic distress is George.
Thank you. My name is Mr. George Mwaro. Yes, I'm an accountant by profession. A graduate. I did my BSc in accounts at Masinde Muleba University back then. I also did CPA to intermediate level.
Thank you, George, for joining us today. How is life under economic pressure, sir? And will Kenyans have relief of tax coming the next financial year?
Now, almost 80% of tax is going to pay revenue. So next financial year, the next finance bill, it will be more of external borrowing and domestic borrowing. And it will be more of domestic taxation. People need to prepare for that. We are heading into a period whereby it's going to be very critical. And Kenyans, as I said when I started, they need to fasten their belt. True, they need to fasten their belt. Apart from, remember we are getting into a campaign period. Apart from paying for those debts and providing basic needs, the government needs money to campaign. And where will that money come from? It's either through borrowing internally, borrowing externally, or taxing more. So I anticipate that the next finance bill will be most likely to look like the one we had in 2024, where our youths tried to reject.
Thank you, George, for your insights. On to the next story. Governance and electoral malpractices. After years of vacancy and legal battles, the newly appointed IEBC team faces the toughest test. Rebuilding a shattered foundation of public trust, with the 2027 general election looming, the Commission must now register millions of new voters while proving it can operate beyond the reach of political interference. However, the technical fixes alone won't suffice. The real hurdle is overcoming deep-seated legacy of malpractices that has left many Kenyans skeptical of the ballot box. As this new official take office, the nation is watching to see if they can transform a source of national anxiety into a transparent arbiter of the people's will. For millions of Kenyans, the ballot box is no longer a symbol of hope, but a container of doubt. As 2027 horizon nears, a chilling silence has settled over the electorate. A confidence bankruptcy that has no press statement from the anniversary towers that can seem to fix. We are witnessing the erosion of the ultimate social contract. The public has effectively turned out, convinced that free and fair is a phrase reserved for the textbooks, not for the Kenyan reality.
But the previous IEBCs have been stealing with that from our votes. They have been putting people by force. You see, you elect somebody you like, then they force you with rabbit. deadbeat dad.
From the ghost of the past tallies to the shadow of prolonged malpractices, the IEBC finds itself in a desert of trust. Voters are no longer asking who to vote for, but whether their vote even travels beyond.
And I think the 2027 election will not be free and fair. We can see all indications and signs are that we are headed for a very chaotic election. In fact, this regime is planning to reach the 2027 election because you can see them militarizing the police. You can see how they are rearranging the Supreme Court, and you can also see they are doing everything to whip emotions to set community against community. Just listen, their problem is not a tribe. Kenyans have realized that our problem is bad governance. Whether it is one of your own who is in the presidency, our problem in this country is bad governance. So Kenyans will not be divided along tribal lines. Kenyans will not fight each other. Kenyans will fight bad governance by voting out Dr. William Samoei Ruto.
On the slit of the box. In the streets of Nairobi, the sentiment is identical. When the referee is seen as a player, the game loses its meaning. The message from the ground is very clear. Kenyans are tired of incompetent leaders, and their vision is to elect the new competent leaders into the office coming 2027. But they are not sure if the IEBC will conduct a free and fair election coming the 2027 elections. The question now remains, what will the IEBC do to restore the trust of the Kenyans coming the 2027 elections? Reporting for InFocus News Nairobi, my name is Job Ojuma. Joining me is an electoral analyst, Ezra Marco Diambo. Welcome, Ezra. The new IEBC team inherits a profound crisis of faith where technical fixes alone won't suffice. In 2026, the Commission isn't counting votes, it is auditing for its own legitimacy to prove the ballot is finally firewalled. If they cannot secure the vote today, the democracy process risks losing all the meaning for a generation that ran out of patience. Can this commission deliver the iron-clad safeguard needed to bridge the trust gap before 2027? And why do you think so?
Yes, we have. I'd cite someone I admire so much, though he's resting in his grave, though I know currently is standing. That is Chris Msando. Chris Msando developed a structure where the electoral independence was going to be truly independent for the first time in this country. But we saw political elites and political powers try to subdue that. Yes, they did to around 50% or maybe 60% because currently we still have votes getting lost. But there is a possibility, there is a bigger picture. And I tell you, there is a generation coming here, because this is a generation who can hack a bank in Tanzania and get into a payroll. There are people who can develop systems that can truly work, electoral systems that can really work to deliver the clean results and deliver the clean, true meaning of independence. There's a higher possibility. Everyone that is in that position, currently it's Equaton, right? That guy, we all have hopes that he's going to deliver. Yes. So everyone who's in that seat is legible, and we hope. Because I want to say they are bad, we have not tried them, we have not tested them. We are going to try them, we're going to test them in 2027. And we have hopes as a country, as a people, as citizens, that they're going to build an independent body, they're going to govern an independent body, and they're going to have a system that is independent, that is working for the citizens.
Thank you, Ezra, for your insights. Coming up after the break, Kenya's life at risk after severe flooding occurred in parts of Central and Nyanza region, causing many residents along these places to be homeless. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back with more.
This roof-stained cow is owned by the Liddells. The Liddells produce a great-tasting milk that's easy to digest and feels lighter in your tummy. And that, my friends, is pretty special. It feels lighter. It's lactose-free.
Welcome back to InFocus News. We now turn to examine the crisis striking the heart of our nation. Kenya is currently caught in a deadly cycle of climate whiplash that is pushing our nation infrastructure to its absolute limit. While the capital and parts of the Lake Victoria Basin grapple with devastating flash floods that have displaced thousands overnight, these areas continues to face catastrophic loss of livestock and livelihood. Our reporter Ibrahim has more.
From the submerged streets of Nairobi to the overflowing banks of Nyando River, Kenya is once again caught in the grip of devastating climate whiplash. Just weeks ago, many of these regions were counting the losses of a failed short rain season, yet today they are being battered by endless flash floods. With over 80 lives lost this month and more than 30,000 people displaced nationwide, the infrastructure of our major cities and rural hubs is reaching a breaking point. Families in informal settlement like Kibra and Mathare are watching their homes disappear into the mud as a month's worth of rainfall in a single 24-hour window, overwhelming drainage system that simply weren't built for these extreme rains.
Change. We all agree that when the climate changes, there are a lot of things that are going to come at the end of the day, things that we didn't have before that change. But that notwithstanding, we have a society and we have a government that at all times need to be prepared for such eventualities. Because you realize a government has the responsibility of ensuring they know what could happen at the end of the day. It therefore means they have to prepare for the same. Number two, you realize on the issue of Nairobi, I have a slightly sharp different opinion on how the government is supposed to be ready with the issue of the climate change, especially on Nairobi context. Nairobi as a county, for example, I think it has a lot deep more than just the drainage systems that we have. But again, the government must always prepare. For example, they must ensure the drainage systems are clear. They are made in a proper manner so much that when it rains or the climate has changed, then we have very clear channels through which that water is going to move through. Because we know the state of Nairobi, the position of Nairobi, the planning of Nairobi since independence. So we've already known all these problems. So we need to prepare. In an event, it rains or maybe there's any climate change, then you should find when programs are in place.
Reporting for TV7, my name is Ibrahim Ambuchi.
To analyze how this can be held in the future, I am joined with the weather forecast expert, Kevin Okech. Welcome, Kevin, to our studio today. Floods and climate shock has been an issue in Kenya for a long time. Sir, what do you think is the reason beyond flooding in the city?
There are a lot of factors that has led to that. First of all, you will realize that from 2023 to 2026, there is a difference in climate. There is a change in climate. And this has been caused by the activities of human beings in the earth. That is, number one, destructions of the forest that leads to rainfall that is not imbalanced. You know, therefore, the rain that we currently have is imbalanced in one way or another. Number two, also, we can talk about the constructions that are happening in the earth are also leading to destructions of the climate in one way or another. For example, and I think NEMA is not doing what it's supposed to do. The constructions of roads and railways in the country, specifically when I talk about Kenya, should actually cope up the development, the economical development, but also look at the future of the climate. But then you realize that it's not taking that shape in one way or another. Why? Because there are other agencies of the government that has slept on their eyes, on the ears, and they're not doing what is supposed to be done. And that's the reason why we have a fluctuation in the weather that we are currently facing.
Do you think Kenya can do anything to resolve the problem?
Kenya is, in one way or another, is trying to do its work. Other countries are also trying to do their work. But the question is, what are the recommendations that the government is putting in place that can cope up with the issue and also create an opportunity for economic development for the country? Because when you look at the activities that are being undertaken, are the activities that can lead to the benefit to the Kenyans and other parts of the continent. But again, they are not keen enough on looking at the areas that can lead to the destructions of the climate. Now, the government, in one way or another, should look or map out these destructive factors and cope them while developing the country. That is exactly what government should do. Unfortunately, as I had said earlier, in one way or another, some government agencies are sleeping and they are not taking the serious creations of policies that can govern climate change.
Thank you so much for your insight, Kevin. Tightening financial squeezes reshaping the modern household as a quiet surge in borrowing transforms the occasion safety net into permanent lifeline. From high street bank loans to buy now, pay later, apps and informal community lending, the reliance on both commercial and non-commercial credit is hitting the record levels. Driven by rising living costs and stagnant wages, this growing web and debt is no longer just about interest rates. It is the fundamental shift in economic survival, where the promise of tomorrow is increasingly being spent to manage pressure of today. Our reporter Kennedy has more.
For many Kenyans, this isn't just about bank loans anymore. It's about the Shylocks and the constant pings from mobile lending apps that have become our daily bread. We're caught in a cycle where you borrow from one Mshwari or Tala just to pay off another, while like traditional chamas and neighborly soft loans, once meant for growth, are now being used just to keep the lights on and the unga on the table. It feels like we're walking on a financial tightrope, where the gap between our stagnant salaries and the skyrocketing cost of living is being bridged by debt that we ain't sure we can ever truly outrun.
Watu wanaweza kuzinunua na purchase at a good price. So hizo zingine za foreign unapata zinakuja na bei ya juu, so pia bei ya juu zinazo na bei ya juu.
The data reveals a structural shift. Since 2022, digital loans account in Kenya have nearly tripled, while commercial lending is rebounding due to recent interest rate cuts to 8.75%. The real story is the million of micro borrowers using mobile apps for daily survival. However, with the non-performing loan ratio hitting 16.5%, the record number of debtors is reaching a breaking point, where the ability to repay is stretched thinner than ever before. Reporting for InFocus News Nairobi, I'm Kigera Modoi.
Joining us is a financial literate analyst from Financial Service Perspective, George Mwaro. Welcome, George. Can Kenya survive without funding? How?
Not agreeing. Yeah. And there is what we call, even in our workstations, I want to be seen as a good person to my senior, to my boss, or to my financier. You see, that is what is happening in Africa. When you go out there, Kenya wants to look that it is clean in the eyes of China for financial gain. Kenya wants to position itself as it is better than South Africa at the G7. You see, that weakens the relationship in African countries. My point could be, we need to do away with this. The way we have the European Unions, these people, they work together, they bargain together. It's the way we can have an African Union. First of all, we need to start with an East African Union, whereby the East African community as a state can work together, bond, then they'll have a power when they go out to negotiate on behalf of their citizens. As an African country, continent, they need to come together. When they come together, they become so strong. The bargaining power will go high, will go up for the benefit of their people. We will see that ourselves, we are exporting our raw materials at a very high price. And we will get these finished products at a very affordable prices when we get them back. Because we've seen what division have cost. Yeah, we've seen what division has cost.
Thank you, George, for your insights and response. That was very clear and insightful. InFocus News reveals a nation at a structural breaking point where debt servicing now consumes 70% of the tax revenue, leaving ordinary Kenyans in a disparate liquidity trap. From the IEBC uphill battle to restore electoral trust to the climate shocks, snapping our agricultural backbone, the pressure has forced a record of 7.2 million citizens into a cycle of digital borrowing, just to survive as the default rate hits a strategic 16.5. We are left with one haunting question. Is Kenya economy finally maturing, or are we simply mitigating our collective future to pay for today's meal? That concludes this edition InFocus News. Your engagement under hashtag InFocus News right now proves that while the economic hurdles of 2026 are high, the Kenyan spirit remains vigilant. Let's keep the conversation going on our social media pages. We don't just report the news, we'll leave it with you. Stay informed, stay resilient. Until next time, my name is Job Ojuma.